please the court?
Yes.
Why are we here? We're here today because on January 15th, 2020, a group of individuals, a family, co-defendants, Leroy Whitaker, Hakeem Robinson, their good friend Dominic Varner, and a few others, fulfilled their collective, premeditated design, their plan to execute Charles McCormick. What was the reason? It was personal. There was no justification for it. Charles McCormick did not deserve to die. He made a song. That song was disrespectful. But it's not just that it was a song. It's what the song referenced. Specifically, who it referenced. Willie Addison. Because Willie Addison wasn't just another person. You heard from Hakeem Robinson's sister who Willie Addison was. He was blood. Brothers. And Leroy Whitaker is Hakeem Robinson's cousin. Their blood. And Willie Addison's blood was spilled on January 15, 2019, along with Abdul Robinson Jr., Hakeem Robinson's brother, Oregon Williams, Abdul Robinson Sr., who we know as Blue, and a couple other people in the vehicle. Hakeem Robinson and Leroy Whitaker were not in the vehicle, and you know that from way back in the opening statement. I wasn't hidden from you. They didn't have to be, because again, it was their family that was in that vehicle. It was their family that was killed, and it was their family that was severely injured. It was his brother, Hakeem Robinson's brother, that was shot in the head. And in the hospital for months. Had to learn how to walk again. And then Hakeem Robinson and Leroy Whitaker listened to Smoking on Willie. And it's not just the lyric of Smoking on Willie, it's who's singing it. Because it's Charles McCormick, who's part of Six Block. Keep in mind, ATK, Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker, they don't like Six Block. They're rivals. They hate one another. And then you have a rival, someone you hate already, smoking on your brother. And that lyric buries its way into their minds, into their memories, into their blood. They're not going to let it go. They're not going to let something from Six Block go regardless, let alone something so personal as family, brothers, blood. Can't let that go. Some exhibits, States 40, States 227. On the left, of Hakeem Robinson's Instagram account. Rest in peace, big brother. You know I stood on all 10 about you. Don't speak on Willie. That's exactly what Charles McCormick did. He spoke on Willie. He said, smoking. And then, next to it, on Abdul Robinson Jr.'s account, 2020. 2 days after the murder of Charles McCormick, which took place coincidentally exactly on the 1-year anniversary of Willie Addison's death. 365 days in a year, and he dies on January 15th of 2020. The bullseye on the calendar, and he was the target, and they took him out. Stage 229. That's just a short clip of the song that you all heard. That's probably the most important part of it. And I guarantee you that lyric, as much as you all remember it from hearing it before, those who knew Willie, who loved Willie, who considered him blood, they heard that every day. Here's another photograph, States 229. Willie Addison, Boss Goon, surrounded by Hakeem Robinson, Abdul Robinson Jr., and there's Torgon in the middle. Family. You heard from Hakeem Robinson's own sister. They all heard about it, they all knew about it, and they, Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker, were upset. They were really upset over it. And you know who else told you that? His father, Abdul Robinson Sr. And if you could set aside your personal feelings and emotions regarding that individual for a moment, and just think about that one statement that he told you. We were aware of that song, we were upset by it. Hakeem Robinson and Leroy Whitaker were upset by it. Abdul Robinson Jr. was upset by it. You can detest Abdul Robinson Sr. He can still be telling you the truth. And how do you know that that statement from him is truthful? Because Hakeem Robinson's sister from that witness stand earlier today told you the exact same thing. Just as she corroborated him that Hakeem Robinson was living with him. They were all living at the same house on Brown Jersey Court. January 6, 2020, this is States 30. Recognize those faces? Cousins, January 6, 2020. In a criminal case, you have heard, and the judge will go over the law with you at the conclusion of this, it is the state's burden. We have to prove the charges. We have to prove them beyond a reasonable doubt. The key term there is reasonable doubt. It's not beyond all doubt, not beyond a shadow of a doubt, a forced doubt. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. You would have to have a doubt that is reasonable. But if you have an abiding conviction of guilt, the case is proven. And I'm going to suggest to you that it has been proven, and it's not even close. We're going to go through the evidence here, but just very, very quickly. I'm not spending much time on this. Count 1, first-degree murder. Both Hakeem Robinson and Leroy Whitaker have been charged with that, as you know. I don't believe there's going to be any debate, there hasn't been throughout the trial, that what happened to Charles McCormick on January 15, 2020 was first-degree murder. It's captured on video. Person gets out, runs him down, and guns him down. It's not justified. There's no defense. It's clearly premeditated. So there is no doubt, no debate that this crime was committed. The one and only question is, who is responsible? And if you remember, back in opening, brings us back to the two questions. January 15, 2020, where were they and what did they do? That's what the state has to answer for you through the evidence. And the state has answered that with a mountain of evidence in this case. One additional instruction I want to talk about briefly before I get into the evidence is the instruction on principles, which I anticipate you will see from the judge. And that is because more than one individual was involved in this crime. One person pulled the trigger, but not just one person is guilty. Because this wasn't a crime committed by one person. There were, as you all know based on the evidence, 3 individuals in that Nissan Altima. 3 individuals. And they all, to a man, wanted this to happen. When you go to commit a crime like first-degree murder, you don't bring along staff. You bring along co-defendants, family, those who want the same thing that you want. And so the law of principles is, even if you didn't pull the trigger in this case, you are still guilty if you intended that crime to occur. And you did something, said something that encouraged the other individuals to commit that crime. You intended the crime to happen, and then you did something or said something that encouraged or assisted the other individuals to complete that crime. And then you are to be held accountable just as if you were the one who physically pulled the trigger. So let's talk for a moment about the evidence. There were witnesses in this case, because this did take place at a shopping plaza on a Wednesday just before 11 a.m. But it's a very large shopping plaza. And you can rely on your own memories as you deliberate and talk about the evidence and the witnesses and their testimony, and look through the exhibits, including the video. And I encourage you to look closely. Almost every single one of the witnesses in this case were very far away. They were at the other end of the shopping plaza, away from express employment. There were 2 witnesses who were very close to what happened. Lashida Saunders, who owned and was working at Express Employment, who knew Charles McCormick, who her company was helping him get a job, said goodbye, and you recall what she told you she said to Charles McCormick as he began to walk out the door. You remember? Have a good day out there. And she stood at the door, and she watched through the glass as the person she knew, who had just gotten a new job, walked towards the parking lot where neither one of them knew Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker, and Dominique Varner were waiting in that stolen Nissan Altima, a car they had no right to be in, but they wanted a car that couldn't be connected back to them. And so they waited. And that is where States 187 comes in. Miss Saunders. You can look at states 187, still see the front door of Express Employment. And you can kind of see through the glass where that desk area is where she said she was standing, just as Charles McCormick began to walk outside. And she told you she was there, and she saw from the corner of her eye that shooter, that gray and black Nike hoodie, come running towards the parking lot, from the parking lot towards Charles. And Charles ran back initially for the front door of Express Employment. And then, as you see in the video, he turns. What does she tell you? He's coming towards the door. We lock eyes. I see him, he sees me. And so he turns. He had a choice. He could have run inside that public office, putting everybody in there, putting the Saunders at risk. But he didn't. He ran around the corner and never made it very far. But what did Miss Saunders tell you? I saw them, couldn't identify anybody, can't identify Hakeem Robinson because his face was covered. 79 degrees outside, but he's wearing a hoodie and it's pulled up and his face is covered. And she gives a description. She says, looked like he had some hair underneath the hoodie. Wasn't a low cut. And we all know Hakeem Robinson did not have a low cut back in January of 2020 because we have video. We have photographs showing exactly what his hairstyle was like in the days leading up to this. And she said, I can't put a number on it. She didn't say the shooter was tall. She didn't give a number. But what she could do, or what she did do, is say, Charles McCormick, the person she knew, the person she just talked to, the person she just walk out her door, the shooter was bigger than him. Was taller than him. Not as thin. And how tall was Charles McCormick? According to the medical examiner, 5'10".
Objection, mischaracterization of the testimony.
Overruled.
5'10". And the shooter was bigger than him. And she got a clear front row seat to that event as that shooter, Hakeem Robinson, chased Charles McCormick down right in front of her, close as this. It's not strangers. It's not 30, 40, 50 yards or more away. It's right there. And it's someone she knows. Shooter was taller, was bigger. What did Victor Kruger say? He doesn't know anybody. He just happened to be checking out his mail. He's sitting in that truck. They run past him. And again, this all does happen very quickly. What does he say? Shooter to me looked like, I don't know, just under 6 feet, maybe 5'10", 5'11". 5'11" or 6 feet. An inch. An inch. You know how tall Hakeem Robinson is. 6 feet. Just a tad over, barefoot, according to laser scans. Victor Kruger could be 5'11". Pretty close. Again, keep in mind, the shooter doesn't stop, say, measure me. He's running and gunning, and this happens very fast, but the two closest witnesses, the two clearest fields of vision, both say very consistent descriptions. Bigger than Charles, who's 5'10" according to the medical examiner, and Victor Kruger, 5'10", 5'11", maybe just under 6 feet. Very, very consistent. Parking lot, 187. still shot. You have the video. You'll be able to look at it. You see all the witnesses? You have to squint. How far away are you? You know how tall they are? Keep in mind it's a video. But do you have any idea how tall those people are? You can tell what they're wearing. And then this happens in 10 seconds or less. There's more gunshots than there are seconds that it takes for this crime to be completed. And you hear from a few witnesses who are way down there by Bailey's. Mr. Williams. Well, the guy looked like maybe he was crouching. You know what happens when you crouch? You get a little small. Maybe 5'8". But then what did he say? Although sometimes I see people and I think they're smaller than me, I walk up and what do you know? They're taller than me. Jarvis Roberts says he's at least 25, 30 yards away. Saw it for about 2 seconds. That was his testimony, 2 seconds, because he hits the ground. He's way over there. Maybe 5'8", 5'9", somewhere in there. 2 seconds of an individual running and gunning, not standing straight, not standing up, and you're 30 yards away, which automatically means the object appears small. Common sense. The further you get away from something, the smaller it looks. Anybody ever had an eye test? With a little tree in front of you, where they blow the puff of air, it starts getting further and further away. Hakeem Robinson on January 2020. There were some questions. You don't have photographs of him when he was arrested. See what he looked like. Well, when he got arrested in September 2020, what he looked like really doesn't matter. You know what matters? What he looked like on January 15th of 2020 when this murder took place. Defense 3. January 14th, 2020. The day before their plan was fulfilled. Willie's Day. This is a preview of Hakeem Robinson, what he looked like. You look at that. Oh. You see the hair? You see the legs? Still Defense 3. Same day. Keep in mind, the individual in red, the sergeant that testified, said he was what, 6 foot, 300 pounds at the time? Himself, not Hakeem Robinson. And there's Hakeem Robinson. States 230, January 5th, 2020. 2 individuals who I think everyone will recognize. Leroy Whitaker, and that's Hakeem Robinson. And Leroy Whitaker's 5'6" on the laser scan. Clearly shorter than Hakeem Robinson. And then you put them side by side, and Hakeem Robinson starts bending over. Still, January 5th, 2020. There they are together. Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker. Cousins, blood. Approaching Willie's Day. And look at the hoodie on Hakeem Robinson. Does that shape on that head look somewhat familiar? Anything any of you have seen in this case? About now, states 187 and 230. Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker, left and right. And in the middle, the shooter. wearing a gray and black hoodie. Gray and black hoodie you have all seen and will see again, worn by Hakeem Robinson. Pretty good shot of the firearm, too. We'll come back to that. States 248. Hakeem Robinson's height, measured by lasers, 6.0302 feet barefoot. And if you recall, there were some questions of the expert about the defense counsel across about, did you tell him he was going to get measured for his height? Did you tell him to stand perfectly straight and put his feet together? Keep in mind, those are two things that Shooter never did for any of the witnesses that the defense would like you to believe their estimation of. But if simply spreading your right and left foot apart is going to affect one's height in any observable way, how in the world is running going to affect it? It's going to make you look smaller, right? And to the right, you see Leroy Whitaker and Dominic Varner, 5.6233 feet, 5.5873 feet, very close to one another. States 248, still shot from the dash cam. Charles McCormick and the shooter, side by side. Does the shooter look a little bigger, like Ms. Saunders said? How about height? You can ignore the head. Look at the shoulders. Equal distance from the camera, almost the same body position. 5'10" Charles McCormick, Hakeem Robinson. Still states 248. You saw and heard from the expert who did the laser scans and then the 3D kinematic model. Shooter on the left, Hakeem Robinson's body scanned model, right? This shows shooter, Hakeem Robinson, the shooter's kinematic model, and then 3D laser scan of Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker, and Dominic Varner. Dominic Varner, Leroy Whitaker, 5.7 feet, excluded. Doesn't match up. Hakeem Robinson, not excluded. States 243. This is on November 25th, 2019. Gray and black hoodie. Keep in mind, it's not that Nikes aren't owned by other people. And if all the state had was this photograph or this video of Hakeem Robinson in a similar black and gray hoodie, this case wouldn't be so black and white. But it's not. It's just one piece of the evidence. And you have to look at all of the pieces in totality. And they all point to Hakeem Robinson and Leroy Whitaker. States 197.
It's Ksoo.
Ksoo's Instagram account. Instagram Live. Black and gray hoodie. You see his hair. See him moving around. Bang It Out music video that was filmed on December 11th, 2019, a month before the murder of Charles McCormick. And look at the firearm in Keem Robinson's hand, his right hand. Fairly distinctive looking, I would suggest. And look at the map, the data for where this video was filmed. You see it close to Mosh. Where did Abdul Robinson Sr. say? He said, I was there when that was filmed. Over there by the chart house. Right over there in that same area. He knew where it was filmed. And it's filmed on December 11th, 2019. Going back to the expert's testimony when he did that comparative analysis between the firearm depicted in that music video as well as a known firearm he went out and procured for his testing, which is in the center. And then looking at the images from the dash cam, the points of comparison. Does it look similar? Even if you ignore the expert's testimony and you just look at these images, what does common sense tell you? What do you see with your own eyes? The Nissan Altima. This is one of the most important pieces of this case because it was stolen, not owned by Hakeem Robinson or Leroy Whitaker or Dominique Barner. So a car they should not have been in, and their evidence of them should not be. And you know beyond any doubt that that Nissan Altima was the car used to commit this crime and flee from it. You know beyond any doubt that it was occupied by those involved in this crime. States 77 and states 187. On the left, that crashed Nissan Altima after it fled from Officer Collins. And on the right, a still shot from the dash cam showing the car that was used, occupied by those who are responsible. Same car. States 187, and this is just a few seconds.
That's the car right there, right there.
Victor Kruger. He saw the car, saw the shooter get back into it, and as you hear, that's the car right there. So there's no doubt that that Nissan Altima was the one that was transporting the guilty from that scene. Let's talk about Officer Collins for a second. He followed that vehicle, not knowing Charles McCormick had been shot and killed, knowing shots had been fired. So he pursued it, turned his lights and sirens on, telling that vehicle, the occupants, to pull over, to stop, and they refused. Barner, who admittedly was in that car driving, and admitted to driving recklessly, reaching very high speeds, going through a residential neighborhood as he was trying to get away. Get away himself, but also those who were with him, his friends. Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker. And Officer Collins, because part of the testimony and the cross-examination has to do with the description he gave. That he advised on the day of this incident that the shooter that he saw get out of that Nissan Altima and run west, 5'5", 5'8", 5'9", somewhere in that range. But where was he when he saw that individual? And on the map, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, four little addresses. Number 1, 1233 Townsend. That's where the Nissan Altima crashed. Officer Collins testified he was further up than that. 1 Townsend, just past Alderman, that intersects with Townsend. And when he saw the person running, he was about half a football field away, about 50 yards. And he saw him for about 2 seconds as they darted across the street. I think we've already covered, but what happens when you're at distance? What happens when someone is running? They appear small. And then factor in, it's a 2-second glimpse. States 80, that Nissan Altima looking back towards the direction that Officer Collins was coming. Based on the map that you were just shown as in evidence, and this perspective, can you even see where his car would have been in this photo? Because he was further back. And just use this visual as context. You can see a car, past a patrol car at the top of the screen. Doesn't look that big. Past that, houses. Imagine being further back and looking at an individual fleeing from the Nissan Altima and seeing him for 2 seconds. States 190. Still shots from the Belmead video that you saw, that's in evidence. You can look at it again. And when you look at it, and you can take note of these times if you want. At 11:23, the shooter runs between the houses and passes that car. Camera doesn't move, car doesn't move, just the shooter. And then look at the image on the right. 11:06:05. Almost 3 minutes later, that's Officer Collins. He wasn't right up on him. And you saw Officer Collins. 6'4", he testified. So look at the 2 images, and on the right, Officer Collins, as he goes past that same vehicle. How do their sizes compare from this image? Is the shooter consistent with someone who's 5'5"? Or is it more consistent with someone that's approaching Officer Collins' height? Someone closer to 6 feet. Maybe 6'1" with shoes. Going back to that Nissan Altima, States 87. It's not just the car, but it's what was found in it. DNA fingerprints. On the Glock, at the top of the slide, not on the handle, not even on the front of the slide, on the rear of the slide, fingerprints belonging to Hakeem Robbins. His prints on that gun in that car. Now, the analyst can't say at what point in time that fingerprint got put on the gun. Dominic Carter can. The expert couldn't. But common sense tells you, based on even the line of questioning, fingerprints can get wiped off. They can get wiped away. You're going to find a fingerprint on the slide of a Glock left behind in a car that the suspect's just fled out of. But that print, maybe that's been on that gun and that gun's just been passed around. And yet you get a print on the top slide, clear enough to identify, and it belongs to Hakeem Robinson, who, coincidentally enough, DNA is found on that rolled up white t-shirt next to it. Greater than 700 billion. The analyst says we stop at 700 billion because we can't comprehend numbers bigger than that. Can you imagine if you were told you had greater than a 700 billion chance to win the lotto? It was over 700 billion times more likely that you were going to win when you purchased that ticket and lose? Would you have an abiding conviction to go out and buy that ticket? think you could lose? Well, I suggest to you that this piece of evidence is a loss for Hakeem Robinson. Because it's over 700 billion times more likely that that's his DNA on that shirt, next to his prints on that gun, and this stolen Nissan Altima that was just used to flee the scene of the murder. States 88, that same shirt, rolled up, balled up, and it's a size large. States 89. If you have the shirts, you can look at them. The one in the back's a medium, where Leroy Whitaker was, a little bit smaller. Also, States 92, you see a rifle in the floorboard, and then that white shirt, that medium-sized shirt, with Leroy Whitaker's DNA. Again, greater than 700 billion. And I want to talk for a moment about the firearms. All right, you got the Glock. You already saw where the fingerprint was on it. And that gun, Dominic Varner says, is his. It serves him no purpose in the world to admit that gun is his. He's just feeding the story. Why say that's his gun? How does that help? Does it serve any purpose? No. But yet he's admitting that not only was he involved, but yeah, that was my gun. If he's just telling a story based on what he knows in discovery, and he knows Hakeem Robinson's prints on it, why not say, that was Hakeem Robinson's gun? He's got his prints on it. But he doesn't. He says, that was my gun. He admits it. And again, you don't have to like Dominic Varner. I'm not saying he's a good person. He's a criminal. He's just their kind of friend. And if you're going to plan a murder, who do you take with you? Is it not a Dominic Varner? You want someone you can count on. Their friend. Someone who shares the same goal. States 92, again, is that rifle. But what I really want to point out, States 103. Because Dominic Varner says that rifle is Leroy Whitaker's. And it's in the back seat next to the item with Leroy Whitaker's DNA. And he didn't pull the trigger, Leroy Whitaker, but he is a principal. He knew what was going to happen, and he wanted it to happen. And this rifle tells you that without speaking a word. Look at it. It's an assault rifle. Okay? It's set to fire. That tab, set to fire, tells you everything about the intent for that weapon is to be used. Not only is it set to fire, there is a live .223 caliber round chambered. One small muscle contraction of the finger away from discharging. States 104, that live round. Leroy Whitaker's live round. Leroy Whitaker's intent in this case. If that one wasn't enough, 107, 26 total rounds. 26 individual statements of intent. Leroy Whitaker didn't have to say a word in that Nissan Altima to be guilty. You show up with a loaded AR-15 and chamber a round, set it to fire. You don't have to vocalize anything. Your actions have made it more than clear you're in agreement with what's about to happen. And if he didn't know what was about to happen, why is he bringing a rifle? Because they were on a hunt. So you bring the tools of the trade. 1214 Timber Lane, States 189. Leroy Whitaker, Dominic Varner. right after they have fled the murder. Akeem Robinson's gone west, they go east. And they leave their guns behind. Leroy Whitaker, not just a spectator, he's an active participant. He was roped into all this, had no idea what was going to take place, no idea what was about to happen, didn't want it to happen. Stayed in the car. He could have got out, laid down in the front yard, put his face down, spread his hands, because the officers were coming, and said, "Officer, officer." But he didn't. Consciousness of guilt. They're getting out of there. Left the guns behind, left the DNA behind, left the fingerprints behind, and then Dominique Varner and Leroy Whitaker are not leaving anything else behind. They're getting out of there. And from that moment, where do they go? 1033 Townsend Boulevard, where Dominique Varner and Leroy Whitaker both collectively committed burglary with assault or battery. To commit a burglary, to prove that, the state has to prove, in this case, because again, Varner already pled to it, admitted to it, to what he did, but Leroy Whitaker did the exact same thing. You have to prove Leroy Whitaker entered a dwelling, Buckley's home, and at the time of entering it, he had the intent to commit an offense therein, other than burglary or trespass. It's not like Leroy Whitaker was homeless, and it was 30 degrees outside, and he needed a warm place to sleep, and he thought this was an abandoned home, nobody's home, and I'm going to sneak in, commit a trespass so I can sleep, protect myself from the elements. That is not what happened. He was protecting himself, but not from 30-degree weather or rain. He was protecting himself from the police. The police who were on his trail, trying to find him, trying to find Akeem Robinson. And so, just like Dominique Varner, who behind the wheel was fleeing at a high rate of speed to escape, this is just a continuation of that, on foot. So, with the intent to thwart the police, to escape the police, to resist the police, to ignore their orders, to stop, Leroy Whitaker and Dominique Varner both entered the home of Barbara Buckley without permission and with the intent to hide from the police, and that is a burglary, plain and simple. But they went a step further, because there's an assault or battery. You also, I believe, hear from the judge that you can infer that there was an intent to commit a crime inside that dwelling if it was done stealthily and without the consent of the owner. What did Barbara Buckley tell you? She didn't invite him in. She didn't even know they had entered. That's stealthy. She thought her cat shut the door to the bedroom. States 114, the enclosed patio that Dominique Varner and Leroy Whitaker entered as the police were closing in, and then states 115, the back sliding glass door to the home, and then once inside, states 125, that bedroom to the front of the house, door open, and when that door got opened by Miss Buckley, looking back at her from states 126 in that closet, Dominique Varner and Leroy Whitaker. Two people she didn't know, had never met, had never been in contact with. And then the assault and battery by both Dominique Varner and Leroy Whitaker. Both, not just one, both. So if you find Leroy Whitaker guilty of burglary, you have to determine, was an assault or a battery committed? An assault is simply an intentional and unlawful threat by word or act to do violence, when they have the inherent ability to carry out that threat. So, for example, when Miss Buckley is thrown down on the ground and she's cowering on the floor and Leroy Whitaker asked Dominic Garner, "You want me to hurt her?" That's an assault. That comes after the battery. The battery is just an actual and intentional touching or striking another person against their will. Did that happen to Ms. Buckley? States 133. She was 57 years old at the time. Home alone, because her husband was at work. She hadn't left for her shift yet. States 121. Front door to her home that she opened, telling Leroy Whitaker, Dominic Garner, "Get out of my house." Opens the door, begins to yell for help. They're not going anywhere. The police are outside. They can't go outside. They have to hide. Consciousness of guilt and proof of the burglary. And states 110. The closed front door, and you can see the brick wall next to it, the little planter box, and there's a metal railing just inside. The metal railing that Miss Buckley told you, she reached out with her hand and grabbed. Sort of a death grip. So much so that even though she's 57 and they're much younger, when Dominic Garner grabbed her to try and get her back inside, couldn't quite get her. So who came to the rescue? Who assisted? Leroy Whitaker. He came and helped break Barbara Buckley free from that rail, pull her back in her home, where they threw her to the ground, and Dominic Garner, admittedly, put his hands around her neck and began to choke her as Leroy Whitaker asked if he should hurt her. And then she complied. That is a battery during the commission of the burglary, and that proves that Leroy Whitaker, just like Dominic Garner, no different than Dominic Garner, is guilty of burglary and assault or battery. And again, states 135. Slight abrasion to Miss Buckley's neck. Wrist, states 130. DNA from those locations matching Dominic Garner. Again, he admits it. No mystery. States 143. And states 189. What states 189? Notice it. He flips his leg on that chain link fence. It catches. And he falls to the ground. And then what do they find on Miss Buckley's clothing? Her pants. Blood. DNA. Whose? Leroy Whitaker. Greater than 700 billion. His blood, after he jumps the fence and catches his leg, on her pants, in her home. She's never met him before that day. Doesn't know him, didn't invite him in. They shouldn't be there. That proves beyond not just a reasonable doubt, but all doubt, that Leroy Whitaker, along with Dominic Garner, are both guilty of this crime. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the evidence. And we'll start with Leroy Whitaker's phone number, 803-3671. We'll have all these records back there. There's a lot to go through if you choose. But states 227. Leroy Whitaker's Instagram account, you can see the account name highlighted in yellow at the top, ATK Scotty. You see a phone number, 904-803-3671, verify. Leroy Whitaker. And you can see at the bottom right-hand corner of the photo, at ATK, and then it kind of cuts off, ATK Scotty. Page 437 and 1057, text messages on that account where he gives out his phone number. And look at the dates. December 19, 2019, before the murder. Text 904-803-3671. January 31st, 2 weeks after the murder. Laugh my call. We will FT. FaceTime same phone number. And then, of course, you have this, stage 241, a text message sent from 904-803-3671 with the attachment of this photograph, Leroy Whitaker, to 624-3684, Abdul Robinson Jr., Kareem, Akeem's brother. So let's look at stage 246. The maps, in this case, done by Special Agent Corley. And with regard to 904-803-3671 and 624-3684, again, that's Abdul Robinson Jr. And on this map, which we've talked about again in a few moments, you'll see the 478-305-9583, which I believe the evidence is proven is associated with Hakeem Robinson, was used by Hakeem Robinson that day. But let's look at the calls. Where are they pinging off of? Between 10:17 a.m. and 11:05 a.m. Leroy Whitaker's 803-3671, as well as Abdul Jr.'s 624-3684, are pinging off the tower. And if you look at the sectors pointing back towards that red icon, 7001 Merrill Road, the scene of the murder. 478-305 number is also pinging off that same tower, based on a data file, placing it at the scene of the murder at the same time as well. Next slide, again showing those same numbers between 11:30 a.m. and 11:51 a.m. So after the murder. And after that Nissan Altima has crashed. And they're trying to get out of there. Leroy Whitaker's 803-3671. Being right around the area. Townsend Boulevard, 1033 Townsend. Got the time in advance record associated with it. And they show kind of how they intersect, that they're in those bands. Somewhere in there. And you see Townsend right above it. As well as the 478-305-9583 pinging off that tower. Just as if Hakeem Robinson using that phone were trying to get out at that time. And where is 624-3684? Abdul Robinson Jr. He is up higher on the map. Going back, excuse me. He is up near the top by the 7001 Merrill Road, but what's also in that area? The Dalehurst Drive, where Torgon was living, where Abdul Robinson Jr. returned and was waiting. And you also have the next slide, again showing Leroy Whitaker's 803-3671 number, Abdul Jr.'s 624-3684, as well as Abdul Jr.'s 478-491-2831 number, because he had two. And if you recall, those numbers, he gave out his Instagram account and messages, both numbers. The 904-624-3684 and the 478-491-2831. Gave them out, just like Leroy Whitaker did on his Instagram. And you can see where they're pinging. And you can also notice that we have in blue another phone number, 904-866-2370, which belongs to Abdul Robinson Sr. Blue. And this shows up by Townsend at around 12 o'clock. If you remember, Leroy Whitaker and Dominique Barner held Miss Buckley there against her will in her own home for about an hour or so. Murder happens a little before 11. Car flies, crashes, they run. So shortly after noon, that's Hakeem's brother, cousin, Blue's other son, asking for help sending the pin drop information to the station in Townsend, 1033 Townsend. That's when he's showing up to pick them up. And Abdul Jr. is pinging again back over near Dalehurst Drive. Leroy Whitaker. His phone records put him again right there in Townsend. I picked up his home before he leaves after being picked up by Abdul Robinson Sr. Hakeem Robinson, 2 phone numbers. One, there's no dispute over, 904-704-1595. Second, the state suggests is 478-305-9583, so write them down. We're going to start with the 704-1595. This is the phone whose account information is in his mother's name. And if you recall, his sister, when she testified, she said, Dad, he did give, well, he took care of his sons. He did give them phones. And Abdul Robinson Sr. also told you that this number was in Hakeem Robinson's mother's name, and you'll see the subscriber information in every Walters. This is his mom's name. This is his main number. The number that can be tracked back to him is in his mother's name. And so, stage 243 on that number, you see on December 28, 2019, a text message, I just got to Jacksonville. So he's back in town on December 28th. He was in town on December 11th as well because he filmed the Bake It Out music video. Maybe he left and went out of town after that. He was back by December 28th. You know what else happened on December 28th, 2019? Abdul Robinson Jr., Hakeem's brother, gets a text from Dominique Barner. What was it about? You could read it for yourself. But it mentions McCormick by name. Same day, Hakeem Robinson's back in town, and they're talking about McCormick. Let's look for a brief moment at Hakeem Robinson's 704-1595 phone, the phone that can be tracked back to him. Look at the activity and recall the testimony from the experts, especially in the early morning, 15, 2020. It's UTC time, so please remember you guys subtract 5 hours. 11:06, subtract 5 hours, and that's 6:06 a.m. My math's right? 6:06 a.m. It continues, and then line 42, 12:11. So 7:11 a.m. More activity. Next activity, not till 18:10, which is 1:10 p.m. So from 7:11 in the morning to 1:10 in the afternoon, this phone, his main phone, his phone that can be tracked back to him, the phone that Donnie Shipes can get a hold of him on, doesn't want to miss out on a deal or anything. For some reason, for the next 6 hours, that phone, that known phone, is off. It's off. No activity, no calls, no data, no instant messages being received, nothing. And then when you look at the logs, January 15, 2020, sometime between 5:55 a.m. and 1:10 p.m., power on events. If you remember the last activity, 7:11 a.m. and 1:10, 1:11, right after a power on event. Off. Wonder why that is. Is it also the same reason you use a stolen car to commit a murder? Something that can't be tracked back to you? So let me make sure my known phone doesn't come back to me at that same time. let's look at the two numbers, 478-305-9583, 478-491-2831. Again, Abdul Robinson Jr., his brother, through his records, admits to using 478-491-2831. Abdul Robinson Sr. said the other number belongs to Hakeem Robinson. And I got it for him. I put it on my account. I'm the authorized user. Look at the subscriber information for both numbers. What's the activation date for both numbers? November 12th, 2019. Same for both numbers. All under Darrell Watts, as Blue told you. That's the account he was using. Again, you don't have to like him. These records don't lie. Page 239 shows some contact or attempted contact between the two 478 area code numbers on January 15, 2020. One at about 9:13, 9:16 in the morning, so before the murder. Around the time that they would have been stalking Charles McCormick at his apartment complex, because remember he signed in at 10:08 a.m., so that's beforehand. And they're in two different cars. And then after 16:54, which is 11:54, 11:55, shortly after the murder, but when Hakeem Robinson needs help, some attempted contact between the two numbers. Not phone a friend, phone a brother. States 240. Again, 904-866-2370, Abdul Robinson Sr., Blue's identified number. He admitted it. You had the cell phone exam showing that it's his phone, showing the cell phone location. When he shows up at Townsend, where he was coming from, you had the video showing that red-orange Dodge Challenger showing up. And what is this? A selfie photo. It was taken of him, and he sends it to 478-305-9583. He's not sending himself a photo of himself. He sends that to both 478 area code numbers, Hakeem Robinson and Abdul Jr. Looking at his outfit. He sends it to both of them. He's not using 478-305-9583. His son is. Going back to the maps for 624-3684 and 702-918-4911. If you recall, that's Dominic Barner's number. And what does Barner tell you? I call Abdul Jr. at around 4:40, 4:45 a.m., let him know Charles McCormick is back. You have the cell records. It confirms that Dominic Barner communicating with Abdul Robinson Jr. on his 624-3684 number around that time. Look at the records from the FBI in Eastern Standard Time, 4:44 a.m., 4:45, 5:01, 5:26. Those are calls between Dominic Barner and Abdul Robinson Jr. And then where does the map place those two devices? Barner in green is down by 3830 University Boulevard, where he was living. This is between 4:42 a.m. and 5:26 a.m. Abdul Robinson Jr. up there near Brown Jersey Court. And then it travels down Dominic Barner's address. Dominic Barner told you what happened. These records corroborate. You don't have to like him. But again, that doesn't mean he's not telling you the truth. The next slide shows both of Abdul Robinson Jr.'s phones, the 624-3684 and the 478 area code number, being in the same area. 5201 Atlantic Boulevard. Charles McCormick live? Over there off Atlantic. What did Barner say? We all went over there. Next slide shows how the 478-305-9583 number that was using data and was pinging initially over there by Merrill Road at the time of the murder, then begins to travel south. Also in that same area at the time was Leroy Whitaker's number and Bill Robinson Jr. The next slide shows how the 478-305-9583, that device traveling from Merrill down to the area of Townsend, right where Dominic Barner told you that Team Robinson was, because he was with him and Leroy Whitaker, before it then begins to travel south again. And keep in mind, he's on the foot. He's still trying to get away. And he goes west down through the residential neighborhood where there's a nature preserve. And that's the location that he's allowed to traverse that takes him out to Arlington Expressway, where he then gets his ride. Page 242, this is that preview location of in that area of Lone Star Road that was deleted off of Abdul Robinson Jr.'s cell phone. How do you erase maps? Remember that search? You got a little thumbnail that saved in cache. And you couldn't delete. That he received from Hakeem's 478-305-9583 number in that area as he's trying to get the location where he can get picked up. This is that nature preserve, stage 248, where Miss Gant took then Detective Smith to that apartment complex and said, this is where I picked Team Robinson up. The defense would like you to believe that she was coached, told what to say. If Miss Gant were just rehearsing a story, would she have given more details? I didn't even remember what Team Robinson was wearing. I mean, that's easy. Not with these people anymore. Not with Oregon anymore. But I remember picking them up. And that location is right where Miss Boston lived. And she confirmed a person in a black and gray hoodie that she recognized because of the alert on her phone about a shooting and looking for suspects came from the woods. Now she says, 5859, glance. She's upstairs. Is right before that, she saw a white female in a silver car driving around the neighborhood, driving around that apartment complex. It looked like she was looking for someone. And she said the lady was holding her phone up. It looked like she was using her phone. She was looking for someone. When Natalie testified, when she talked about the phone, you remember she had the phone up. Just like Miss Boston described. They don't know each other. So I said, I've never seen that lady before. Confirms that Natalie was there and that she picked up who she said. And then on this slide, this is between 12:22 p.m. and 12:40 p.m. That 478-305-9583 number in red, you can see it up there, closer this slide just shows where Abdul Robinson Sr. Blue was at around the time of the murder. He's way across town. He comes from there all the way over to Townsend after being notified that they need a ride, which is also reflected in the next slide when you see that blue number showing up next to Townsend. Spend much time on this, but Abdul Robinson Jr., 904-624-3684. Again, the call log. This is Dominic Varner's number, January 15th, 2020. 13 calls between the two of them. Incoming or outgoing. As Varner said, I was letting you know. Informant's here. They come and get me. Device locations associated from the phone itself. For Abdul Robinson Jr., States 241, starts off Brown Jersey Court. This slide is interesting. Eastport Road and Palm Lake Drive. Meza apartment complex. What did Varner say? We went to an apartment complex to get a stolen car. It makes sense why you would park a stolen car in an apartment complex. You park it in the back. There's lots of cars around. It's harder to find. And it was off Eastport Road, Palm Lake Drive, apartment complex. And at about 6:17 a.m., that time's been corrected, January 15, 2020, Will Robinson Jr.'s device is showing up over there according to his own cell phone. And it goes over to Dalehurst, Oregon lives. This is off his landing, close to where Charles McCormick was living, and then back to Dalehurst around the time of the murder, just after the murder, 11:45 a.m. And then back at the end of the day, 1:22 p.m., shows up Brown Jersey Court. Interesting. And here, still part of States 241, you see some of the pin drop information between Leroy Whitaker's phone, Abdul Robinson Jr.'s phone, and that location information. 1033 Townsend Boulevard. This is Buckley's home. This is another instant message just showing that same location information. Only this is between Abdul Robinson Jr. and Abdul Robinson Sr. And Sr.'s response, I'm about to leave them. What did he say? They didn't come out right away. They had to wait. He's in the right place, and he still had to wait. He's getting impatient. There's police in the area. Sends it. I'm about to leave. That's 1033 Townsend Boulevard. This is for the 478 numbers. And I just wanted to show this on January 15, 2020. FaceTime audio, FaceTime video, iMessage authentication, that process that takes place to make sure when you're trying to communicate between the two devices, they're Apple, they will work. And remember, FaceTime communications, those types of calls aren't reflected in the records. So if he FaceTimes, sends an iMessage with a location, it's not going to be reflected in the records. House of Pain. Creation date, November 14th, 2019. 2 days after both 478 area code numbers are activated. One for Abdul Jr., one for Hakeem Robinson. 2 days later, this House of Pain iCloud account is activated. Same address as Hakeem Robinson's other iCloud account. And it has the 478-305-9583 number. Two-factor authentication. And then from Hakeem Robinson's Instagram account, the nail salon post that we're all familiar with, and the upload IP address, the first 4 groupings of numbers per the carrier are what matter, because that's what's assigned by the carrier. The rest are randomly assigned by devices. Not the same, because it's the same device, we randomly assign. But the first 4 groupings, that's what matters.
It's characterization of the testimony.
Overruled.
This first four grouping of numbers that matter is the same as the registration IP address for the House of Pain iCloud account, activated 2 days after he got his phone. House of Pain, page 230. And there's a lot more. And it's in evidence, you can look at it, but we picked out some of the photos just to show you. December 28th, the day he got back in town. This House of Pain iCloud account. Same day, Garner and his brother are texting about McCormick. There's Hakeem Robinson and Leroy Whitaker. Selfie photo, December 31st, 2019. Series of photos showing Hakeem Robinson's Instagram story posting to this iCloud account. Another photograph of Hakeem Robinson, Ksoo 23X. House of Pain, sure. Did his father start it? Sure. Does that mean he won't use it? No, he won't. He's wearing the shirt. And then photos you've seen, with a hoodie and the shade you've seen, next to a person you've seen, January 5th, 2020, but it was taken on January 4th, 2020, 11:48 p.m., and it gets uploaded to this iCloud account 3 hours later. Remember the time difference from California to Mexico? It's uploaded to that iCloud account almost immediately after that photograph is taken. His iCloud. January 6th, Hakeem Robinson, Leroy Whitaker, cousins. January 9th, a selfie of Hakeem Robinson. January 14th, day before the murder, having a good time. Talked on this, so I'll be brief here, but Stage 177, this is just a photograph of that apartment complex in Arlington Expressway, just on the other side of the curve that he made it out of. Natalie picked them up. And if you recall, when she testified, when she finally pulled in, he's coming up from below, just 2 stories here. And Ms. Boston said, I'm upstairs, and I run in, he's way down below. That cooperates. Now, Stage 194, talk about a few posts by Mr. Hakeem Robinson after the murder. And there was some question as to why would someone post something admitting for what they had done? Unless people are stupid. And when you're 21 years old, you can make some good decisions, and then you can make some decisions that make your father want to take that down. Even bad calls. And when you've escaped the crime that you committed with people you were tight with, and that gun is long gone, that 478 area code number that you don't think can be connected back to you is long gone, well, I can post whatever I want and just say whatever I want. That feeling of invincibility, 21 years old.
Why you started
Now, it's not his song, it's Ace's song, but it's titled Ksoo Homicide, and singing the chorus, man down, right after Charles McCormick was down. 96, 2 days later, also posted Hakeem Robinson's Instagram account. Video of Charles McCormick. Bye-bye. $195. was suggested that you didn't have context for this. 5 days later, that dash cam took your contact. He did run him down, so he might have got a blister. Maybe he needed a pedicure, I don't know. Very, very briefly here, because this case is not dependent on either Dominique Barner or Abdul Robinson Sr. It's not. And we have said and will continue to say, you can think whatever you want about them. We're not asking you to like them. Just evaluate what they said based on the other evidence. Does that evidence corroborate, regardless of what you think of them? And if it does, make your determination. If you cut them out completely, don't you still have enough? His DNA, his prints, his phone location, Leroy Whitaker's DNA, his cell phone location. In that car, right after the murder. And then, at least with regard to Hakeem Robinson, he tells you what he did. He posts it, he brags about it. And again, with regard to the testimony, also remember Hakeem Robinson's sister, because she confirms the important parts that Abdul Robinson Sr. provided. He gives him calls, living with him. They knew about the song. They knew about Willie. Willie, he even asked, well, it's like stepbrother. No, we're blood. We're blood. So were they. And because Hakeem Robinson wanted it, Leroy Whitaker, his cousin, wanted it too.